Hey Joe, what is your favorite Blink-182 album?
Oh yeah, it's this one.
What's up, you guys? Back at it again with another video. This is Tune Fever TV. We're rating the Blink-182 discography. We're gonna go from worst to best. We got my boy Joe. Say what's up to the cuz.
What's up, guys? What's up, gamers?
Dude, he's representing post-punk, but we're gonna be talking about pop-punk, and those are similar because they are both all of it's starting with P. Man, what are some other good words that start with P? How about pretty cool? Because we're about to start a pretty cool video.
Yeah.
All right,
On the
so Blink-182. This is a band that I go way back with. It was my favorite band when I was in like 6th through 8th grade. And so this is a time period where I have a lot of teen angst going on in my life, and I attached myself in a rather heavy way to the music of Blink-182 that was out at the time. And so they're like an important band for me in my little musical history. So we're gonna talk a little bit about Blink-182 right now. They're a band that consists of 3 members who have changed over time. The initial incarnation of the band was Mark Hoppus on bass and vocals, Tom DeLonge on guitar and vocals, and Scott Rayner, who played drums for the band on their first few albums. And then they got a new drummer whose name was Travis Barker, who was a very famous drummer. And later on, Tom DeLonge left the band, and there was Matt Skiba, who was on their latter albums in place of Tom DeLonge. And so that's sort of the member history of Blink-182. This is a band that formed in Southern California. I think the town is like Poway-ish, something like that. Southern California, San Diego area, basically. Tom got kicked out of his old high school for being drunk at a basketball game, I think. And then he went to this other high school. He met Scott Rayner, who would be the drummer of Blink-182. And he also met this guy. What is his name? I wrote it down, something Key, Carrie Key. And Carrie Key had this girlfriend. Now, she was not only incredibly attractive, but she was also the sister of Mark Hoppus, who would join the band as the bass player. And so this is basically they introduced, and then they started jamming, and the 3 of them became enmeshed. And then they all started probably drinking alcohol together and partying and playing music in their spare time whenever they weren't doing that. And also eating pizza. Remember, this is pop punk. They were eating pizza. Let's get real clear on the pizza. And so this is sort of how the band began. And then as you go throughout time, they toured for a little bit, put out some releases, and then when they were touring for the Dude Ranch album, they were having some troubles with the drummer because he was drinking a lot of alcohol and it was affecting his performance in the band. They asked him to stop drinking or go to rehab. He said, well, I need some time to think, basically. And then he decided that he would quit drinking and go to rehab. But the band basically didn't really believe him because he just got drunk in the meantime of making his decision and taking his time to think. And so they didn't really believe him, so they released him from the band. He basically got fired. Then there was this band that they were touring with called the Aquabats. They had a drummer named Travis Barker, and they said, hey, young man, would you like to join our band and learn our entire set in about 45 minutes? And he said, sure. And so he did it, and then they played a show, and they like him. And then he quits the Aquabats and eventually joins the band some months later. And so now you have Mark, Tom, and Travis, which is really kind of the incarnation of Blink-182 that most people really know famously is those 3 together. And then the band put out some releases together, and then they took this hiatus, and then they got back together, put out some or put out a release. And then Tom left the band to pursue non-musical interests, which he communicated to the band through his agent. He didn't even personally do it. He said, "Hey, agent, will you go tell Mark and Travis that I'm going to leave the band to pursue non-musical interests?" So there's some tension that, there's some tension between the members of the band. In particular, I would say between Tom and Mark. And so Tom leaves the band and goes and pursues his whole alien UFO thing, and which he's still pretty into. Hashtag I want to believe. And then this guy named Matt Skiba from the Alkaline Trio ends up joining the band, and Blink-182 puts out a couple releases with him, and that's the last incarnation of Blink-182. So there's these. That's kind of the story. A storied career. They're kind of an older band at this point. They're like 25 or almost 30 years old or something like that. But basically they're known as this legendary pop punk band in like the kind of earlier 2000s for just being a pretty big deal in kind of just the rock music world. And they've influenced every band that's remotely similar. Anytime you've ever seen like these My Chemical Romance fan kids, or like any of these like Fall Out Boy fan kids, like Blink-182 paved the way for all of that to take place. So they're a pretty important band. They had to change their name at one point from Blink to Blink-182 because the Irish, there's some Irish band called Blink, and they sent the cease and desist. So the record label gave Blink at the time this choice, like, change your name or we'll change it for you. And they basically didn't do it by the deadline. And so after a few weeks, the record label calls them and they're like, change it right now or we will change the band name for you. And so they added an arbitrary number to the end. So 182 means nothing. Blink probably means nothing also. Not really sure. I mean, Blink means blink, but I don't know much other than that. Here's the deal. When I got into Blink-182, I was in middle school, as I already said, and so that was a very important time for me to kind of discover some music. The first time that I heard a Blink-182 song was in some Madden game. They had the song called Action, which is now called Feeling This. The name has since changed, but in the Madden game, it was called Action. And so that's the original title that I knew it as. And so I heard that song first, and then Guitar Hero World Tour comes out, and I heard the Darn It song in that game. And then whenever I realized, hey, this band makes two songs that I like, maybe I'll like this band. And so I went and checked out more of their stuff and found that I really did. I had a friend in middle school who was also a Blink-182 fan, and he knew a lot more about the band than I did because his family is all fans of them. And so he would like burn me CDs of their music and give them to me to listen to. And that was a fun thing to talk about when I was in middle school with that gentleman. And so that's kind of how I got to know the band, is sort of through those things. Joe, I guess I'll turn it over to you. How did you come to know the band Blink-182?
Sure. Here, it's Tyler and a lot of people have the story of growing up listening to Blink-182 and it being influential. I'm not like that at all. I got into them pretty recently, actually. But if you go back, when I was in high school, I started playing bass guitar. All the Small Things was the second song I ever learned how to play on bass. The first song I ever learned was, what is it called? All My Lovin' by Beatles. And the second song I ever learned was All the Small Things by Blink-182. And this was back when I used a pick because, I didn't know how to use a pick, but I couldn't use my fingers because they weren't strong enough to actually pluck the strings, which is just really sad. But I've come a long way since then as a musician and a music listener. And then the song Aliens Exist was on Lego Rock Band of all games. So I knew that song. For me, all my pop punk teenage angst was around the band Green Day. That's what kind of got me into CDs and got me into music. So kind of similar, but not really. So more recently, probably maybe only like a year or 2 years ago, I found a CD that both Tyler and Daniel, our other friend who likes CDs, both really like, and that was cool. And I don't want to say what it is yet, but Tyler probably already knows, based because I said he knows the CD that he and Daniel both like. I'll just say it was Dude Ranch. It's that CD.
Dude, reveal.
The reveal. And I kind of got hooked after that, and I started buying more CDs. And it was weird, even though I had all these CDs, I didn't really think of myself as like a fan or anything. It was just like, oh, it's something I kind of like every once in a while. But now, like going through the whole discography, I really like this band, and there's a lot more albums that I really love than I initially thought I would or did, which is really cool. So that's kind of my so that's kind of my recent story of Blink-182 and getting into them as a band.
Awesome. Okay. During your story, I realized that it's kind of hot in my upstairs room, so this hoodie is going to be kind of hot. So let's make this video as fast as possible because I'm going to be sweating up a storm. We are going to now be ranking the discography of the band. And we're going to basically be doing the studio discography. We are also including Buddha, which is not a studio release, but it is the band's first commercial release. It is a demo album. We'll get more into the album later, but we will be including it on this list because basically I made the executive decision as the YouTube channel operator that I would like to include it. We will not be including live material like the Mark, Tom, and Travis show, even though it is excellent to listen to. We won't be including things like EPs or non-album tracks, which that's something. Blink-182 has a lot of non-album tracks that are really excellent. Really, Blink-182 is a pretty interesting band because it's kind of a rabbit hole you can go down. You can listen to their studio discography, and then you can get into all the other stuff and all the side projects too. There's a whole bunch. There's like the Angels and Airwaves, Plus 44, Boxcar Racer, Transplants. There's some more too. It's all very interesting. Now, I'm going to click the share screen button here on my computer. Right there.
So you
are now seeing the our little background thing that we're going to be using in order to rank these albums according from worst to best. According from worst to best. Bad grammar, so I'll just repeat myself. You have the dates here below each album that you can see as the viewer. And that's the chronology of when these albums were released. That's just a handy thing to have on the screen. And so we're going to be ranking these starting right now. So Joe, what is the worst Blink-182 album?
To me, the worst Blink-182 album is the album titled 9 from 2019.
Yeah, that's correct. You got the
year so far.
You got the year correct. I chose California to be in the last spot. And so as you, the viewer, can see, my list will be on top and Joe's list will be down below. And I'm not talking down below in the description. I'm talking just a little bit below the top thing. Now let's see. Joe, I'll go ahead and let you discuss why you put the band's most recent output, 9, at the last spot on the list.
Sure. Well, I will say, I think we are. I might be spoiling my next album, but I wanted to put both of these albums last. I didn't like either of them.
Hit that dislike button down below.
Dislike button, you guys. Just nah. I disliked these albums. These albums, to me, at least have some of the same problems. But to me, 9 has a few more problems that I didn't like about the album. First, if you go on Wikipedia and look at 9, there's like a million songwriters on this album. There's 3 guys in the band, but there's like this whole list of songwriters, and like that could be a good thing. But I didn't think any of the songs were good. But also, there's also a whole other list. There's like a million producers on this album, and that's I don't think that's a good thing. And like, here's the thing, like I could just talk about why I don't like this all day, but I really want to get through this just so we can talk about the good albums, because most of the albums I think are good. This album has a lot of trap beats on it, and there's other Blink-182 albums with electronics that I actually like, I think are good, but this is not good. And the whole album, oh my gosh, I just want to move on. I didn't like either of these albums at all, really. There's a song. Well, there's this album's a mess. There's so many electronics, and keep in mind there's more problems that I'll talk about in a second when I cover the next album, if you can guess what that one is. And also, there's a song on this album called "On Some Emo S Word." That might be the worst song title of all time. Not because it has a bad word in it, just because it's just so stupid. This was horrendous. I didn't like it. I didn't like any of this album. Like I just keep saying.
So there's not even a moment that you feel positively about.
There were some moments on California that I liked, just like very few, but there were like a few. Oh, well, one thing I do like about Nine. So it's called Nine because they have 9 albums, including Buddha. Like even though Buddha isn't a studio album, they included that in the number, which I think is pretty cool. So I like that about it. I want to hear you talk about California and why you think it's the worst album.
Dude, you're like, the name of the album makes sense. That's it.
That's about it.
The
But
band,
I want to hear why you think California last, because I'm interested.
They know how to count.
They do know how to count. Yeah.
Dude, here's the deal. Since you've done your big reveal, I'm going to stick California down there with your little dude.
Yeah.
And we can kind of talk about the album together, I think. Just because both of us are on this sort of wavelength of this being sort of towards the bottom. Okay, my thoughts on California is that there are a lot of really odd ideas that aren't very good. And it's kind of a mixed bag between there are odd ideas that are not very good, or there are extremely derivative, standard as crap like pop punk ideas that are just the most pizza and fart jokes thing you can think of. Now, California, the lyrics, they're kind of bad. And lyrics of Blink-182 run the gambit of being completely incredible and jokes, but these are neither jokes nor are they completely incredible. They're just kind of lame. There are several na 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 nas and
a lot of them.
and so those are what they are. I would say that the sound of the album is very flat and is very lame. There's not a whole lot of dynamics involved in this album or energy. They really just sound like old people trying to muster up enough energy to make some music for the hey fellow kids, check out our little group that we've got going, our little shindig, if you will, and I suppose you probably may. Now this album is not worthless trash. Okay, it's on the bottom of my list, and I would say that I do not listen to it at all. And this album came out and really disappointed me with Blink-182. Really disappointed me. Massive letdown. But I do not think it is worthless trash. I think that there are some redeeming moments. For example, Travis Barker is not slowing down as an incredible contributing member to the band. There are so many great and clever drum parts all over this album. And that is just something to say in general about Travis Barker, is that I think that he should be given credit particularly for how clever he is and how good at writing drum parts he is. Now there's the people who will say, Travis Barker, best drummer in the whole world. To me, not necessarily. He's a very skilled drummer, and it doesn't upset me or offend me that he would be in that conversation. But I think more accurately stated, what really tends to shine about Travis Barker is he's really writing clever and really musical and interesting drum parts to all through his career. That's what he's been up to. And so I really give Travis Barker a lot of credit for that. There's something I wanted to say. It's a blanket statement across his career. That's what I think of him. One example of him being a complete stud at part writing is the song No Future. All of that really, really fast cymbal work he does, and that ends on that splash, that sounds really, really cool. It kind of reminds me of some of those other really wild drum parts where he kind of use every piece of the drum set as like an essential element of the groove. And that's definitely what this is. He's just hitting everything, but it's very composed and it's really intelligent, I think. And so I want to give him credit on this album. I don't think anything he does here is cringe, but I think about everything else has a certain level of cringe. There's some seriously bad melodrama here with lyrics. There are moments that remind me of Plus 44's approach to writing music, which makes sense because at this point in the band, it's the Matt Skiba era, Matt Skiba with Mark and Travis, and so it makes sense that things kind of sound like the Plus 44 side project. But the thing is they're approached in that way, and sometimes they almost kind of mirror certain Plus 44 songs, but they sound so much worse. And the ideas are so much worse, but it's going for that kind of sound, but it's just really a letdown. And so anytime I hear those sort of elements of the tracks on this album, I would just rather be listening to Plus 44, Now, I will also say a positive thing about this album. I think that there is actually some effort put in. I don't think this was a throwaway album. I think that they were genuinely giving this a shot, but I think it is probably their biggest sellout of their career. Now, we'll talk about other albums on this list that people consider to be sellouts of their career and why I personally don't consider that they are a sellout as near as much as California is, because I think that California is this album that was sort of engineered to make Blink-182 a bunch of money. And it worked. I think they got paid a healthy sum, some big YouTube money, as we like to call it in my industry. But I don't think it was worth it because the product isn't very good with this. It's very forgettable. It's too long at 16 tracks, and that's just the plain old album. Then there's the deluxe version that adds like a whole basically album length set of songs. I don't know why that happened. I don't know who asked for that. There's probably somebody who likes it. But when your album is that boring and that long, why did you double the length with a bunch of throwaways? That's an unbelievable decision to me, which brings up a theme. Blink-182's deluxe versions of their albums are consistently super weird. Consistently super weird. On this album, California, that's one of the things about the deluxe version comment that I'm making that's weird. On the album Neighborhoods from 2011, the deluxe version of it is really weird because the deluxe version adds songs in the middle of the track list. So it like completely changes the sequencing of the album because it inserts songs in the middle. And what that has sort of become is the deluxe version is the definitive version of that album for sure. And the non-deluxe version of that album, absolutely nobody pays any attention to it anymore. And so it's a very odd thing that the deluxe version became the thing. But it's still called the deluxe version. They haven't like changed the name or anything. It just kind of phased out the non-deluxe version in a very bizarre way. And I could talk about the deluxe version of the self-titled album from 2003 doing exactly the same thing. The version that we know of it has those deluxe version tracks, and nobody pays any attention to the non-deluxe version of this album. But I actually have seen this self-titled one referred to not as the deluxe version, when that's actually what it is. So a lot of people, so here's my point to make it a little bit simpler worded. Neighborhoods deluxe version is still called the deluxe version, and it has become the definitive version of the album. The self-titled Blink-182 album, the deluxe version has become the definitive version of the album, but most people don't refer to it as the deluxe version anymore. What the heck? What the heck? Going on from there, Take Off Your Pants and Jacket. It's a joke, haha. From 2001, their album. That album, it was released in such a way where you could kind of collect them all. And this I actually think is cool. Like it fits into the category of weird deluxe versions, but this is actually a positive. It was released with these 3 different versions. One of them was the red plain CD, one of them was the yellow pants CD, and the third one was the green jacket CD. Each one of these different CDs each had their own unique set of bonus tracks on them. And so the only way to get them all on CD would be to collect all 3 of those. And so that's unique. And it is weird, but it's a positive. But Blink-182 with your deluxe versions of your albums, sometimes, what the heck are you thinking? What the heck are you thinking? Anyway, big old tangent, but interesting about the band, thought I would share it. Yeah, I think I've said enough about California. Do you want to talk any more about California? I think I would like to hear some thoughts.
I think you pretty much covered it with the woes and the na-na-nas, and that's pretty much like those are not all of them, but that's a good chunk of the lyrics are kind of fall into that phrasing, I guess, if you want to call it. The vocals on this album are so perfectly pitched and auto-tuned and clean, and I don't like the production on this one. It kind of just sucks the life out of it. And same with the guitars, everything. Well, I guess going back to the vocals, then they're like screaming, like everything's really loud and overblown. And there are other albums, even Blink-182 albums, where it really hits you over the head in a good way. But this one, it just feels like you're getting hit by a hammer. I did not find this enjoyable. What else was I going to say about this one? No, I think that's about it. And then with actually, yeah, you've pretty much covered California. I do like what you said about the drumming though, because I think you're right. I think what was I gonna say? Well, I mean, granted, there's no like crazy, or there aren't as many just crazy trap electronic things, but the drumming is I would say, yeah, it's good on this one, and I'm glad you brought that up because that's something I actually didn't write down, so that's good.
Mm-hmm. It's a big positive. Blink-182 really is kind of a hive mind of these 3 people contributing what they bring to the table. And Travis Barker contributes drums always and consistently. Mark contributes vocals that are good and bass that is fairly standard most of the time. There are definitely exceptions in the discography where Mark's bass playing is more of a significant contribution, but in general, he's not like an incredible bass player. And so a lot of times his bass playing isn't the most notable thing in the world. And with Matt Skiba on the California album, his contribution is his vocal style, which I don't really prefer. And I find myself always comparing it to Tom, obviously, which is kind of unfortunate for him, just being a well-meaning musician trying to make some nice songs. And they're nice. I just don't find that I care very much about him. I don't really like his writing or his vocal performances, and his guitar riffs tend to be pretty bland, especially as compared to some of the riffs that Tom has written, which I completely think are amazing. Yeah, I think we've summed up California. I'm gonna keep talking, I guess, because my next one's 9, which probably isn't the biggest shocker. Also, I don't think that these are hot takes to be at the bottom of this list. Well, I don't have to think. I know that they're not hot takes to be at the bottom of this list. So I wouldn't be surprised if most of our viewers just skip this section because they already know what's going to happen. But let me talk about 9 just a little bit. I do think it's better than California. I think the music has improved. The musicianship and the ambition in song craft has improved a bit here. But I don't think the lyrics have at all. I think they've actually gotten just a little bit worse. Same with some nanas and some oh-ohs. And there's still plenty of those kind of cringe pop punk stereotypes. Blame It On My Youth. How is that a song, the title of a song that you make when you're like a million years old? Just how? This album to me is less boring than California, because I think it has more energy to it than California does in general. And California has some moments of energy, like when Travis Barker messes up his drum fill and he's like, ah, and that's really cute. I guess that would be considered a moment of energy, and it is rather endearing. But I think Nine, the album as a whole, has a lot more energy, and kind of it has like more effort put into it, to kind of make some unique songs, but they don't always make unique songs. I think there is filler. I think there's actually loads of filler, but it's better than California, which is all filler. I mean, think about the name of the album, California. Like, you're a pop punk band and you named your album California. That's the least original thing possible. The least original. Now let's see. Going back to Nine, their ninth album. So the name of the album, it really does make sense. I mean, I can count to nine too, and that's why they called it that. That's great. It's terrific. The name of the album, really good. So on this album, I do think there's some really good ideas. Like, one of my favorite sounds that I hear on this album, it's not the whole song, but I think that a lot of songs have nice parts. One of my favorites is the really fast sections of Black Rain. I think sound like really, really good ideas. So that's an example. Now, I would say this album does not hold my attention very well. It seems more memorable, but there's also a lot that's very forgettable about it. Now, like Joe mentioned with Nine, there's like trap beats and random hip hop influences. I find these very odd. And so I definitely am always skipping on those. And I would say that no song is that good. It just has, there's like a lot of songs that have like nice parts. Some songs have really, really nice parts. But yeah, that's kind of how I would sum this album up, is occasionally interesting. Not,
And that's
not
pretty
what
much
I'd
how
like
I
to
feel about California. Something about Nine, I was just so turned off by the electronics. And California for me has like a few interesting parts, even like you said, it is like this total sell. And the other thing is, I don't actually know anything by Alkaline Trio, good or bad. So Matt Skiba, I hope his work is better there. Tyler can probably confirm from what you know of the band. But I mean, just from his judging from his work in Blink-182 alone, I'm not very impressed so far. And I don't mean to put that all just on him, but from these, I didn't like either of these albums.
To be honest with you, I don't like Alkaline Trio at all. And so it's kind of whatever to
I'm
me.
probably not missing out then.
I don't think so. Yeah, sorry, Alkaline Trio. We had to diss on you just a little bit. I mean, listen to Alkaline Trio, see if you like it. If you like it, that's terrific. Also, earlier in the video, I asked you guys to click the dislike button down below. Could you guys undo that, please? All right, thank you. You know, it's doesn't really affect anything. I just don't want to see it in my notifications. You know, here on YouTube, I have to stroke my own ego just a little bit and do a little bit of this.
Yeah.
Pat myself on the back, give me a nice welt.
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay, let's go to number 7 on our rankings of Blink-182 albums. Now, Joe, I'm going to tell you mine first. Neighborhoods.
Okay. Mine is Cheshire Cat.
Okay. I might have to leave the room, but okay. You got me so struck right now. Let me just talk about my non-controversial pick, okay? Here we go. Neighborhood. What the heck? Cheshire Cat? I'd love to hear your reasons. This is dude, and I see a lot of, okay, we'll talk about it. Neighborhoods. Let me say, so this is the last Blink-182 album that I was personally excited for. I remember the day that it came out. When I was growing up, I lived right down the street from Walmart, and so the day it came out, that evening, I walked to Walmart and I bought it, and then I took it home and began to listen to it, and that was when I realized that Walmart sells clean versions of albums, so I was very disappointed. So I streamed it on the internet. Now, but I own the clean version now. Anyway, this is the last one I was excited for, and whenever I heard it, for the first time, I was very, very excited. There is actually tons of great material on this. And I think that it is interesting to hear how it takes influence from the different side projects that the band's been involved in sort of the hiatus period. Now let's see. The songs, there is some lame stuff on it, but I think for the most part, even the lame stuff sounds fairly nice, especially in comparison to those lower two albums. But usually whenever I try to judge music, I try not to judge it comparative to other things. I try to judge it for what it is, which isn't that funny making a tier list video. Here's the thing. Or not a tier list, a ranking video. But here's the thing. I think that this format of video is fun. And so it was interesting. I'd say the most interesting reason I like to do this type of video is because it allows me to deep dive into a discography. That way I can kind of have some thoughts and then we can do it together and put it on YouTube. I think that's really fun. But in general, my own personal philosophy is I judge art for what it is. I try not to compare it to other art. Just when, do I like this? It doesn't matter if I like it compared to something else. Do I like this? And my opinion about Neighborhoods is yes, I in general like it. And I do think that it is better than those other two albums, but that doesn't matter that much to me. Except for the format of this video is basically comparing everything. So here we go. This is a serious Blink-182 album in tone. And Blink-182 has some of those that are more serious in tone and less about like partying and drinking and pizza. I think we mentioned pizza earlier. Now, this is a serious Blink-182 album, but it does absolutely have plenty of fun. And I think that that's good. I think that this album sounds like it was made by adults, but in a good way. Whereas 9 and California, I think it sounds like it was made by adults in a very bad way. Like the sort of like boomer memes that get posted to Facebook. It's kind of reminds me of that, but Neighborhoods reminds me of like somebody who's an adult doing something cool that an adult would do. I can't think of the best like Dirty Jobs with Mike Rowe. Dirty Jobs with Mike Rowe. That's a perfect comparison to Neighborhoods because this is an adult doing a bunch of really cool stuff that adults do, and it is kind of cool and fascinating. Or like the Mythbusters, for example. Those are adults, and they're doing adult things, and sometimes those experiments involve a lot of danger, and so maybe your 8-year-old shouldn't be participating in blowing up something, or like trying to stop a bullet. Maybe your 8-year-old shouldn't be involved. Maybe they don't have the foresight to know how not to die. But the Mythbusters are cool, and they're adults doing an adult thing in a cool way, and I think Neighborhoods is like that. Man, I just made like a 1-sentence point a whole like doctrinal thesis. But anyway, I would say that that's my general thoughts on the album. Track wise, most of them really, really good. Tons of good guitar riffs, tons of like great singing on the part of Tom and Mark. A lot of good like vocal cohesion, and a lot of good drums on this album. It's the stuff that I want from Blink-182 really is there, which is interesting considering the recording process, because during the recording process, Mark and Travis were together, but Tom didn't want to be in the studio with them. So they were in like very separate places. And then they kind of took their contributions and put them together and then sent this album out into the world, which would make you think that it's a lot less, that you'd think it'd be more of a mess, but really this album shaped up pretty well. And so you have to credit whoever produced it. Pretty interesting album. I actually like it a whole lot in general, but it's lower on the list because I love it less than the things that are above it. And as I said, I'm kind of contradicting my whole philosophy on how I judge music with this format of video, but this format of video is pretty fun. And so the other ones I love more, but I also love this one. And so I would say from this point on, it's albums that I really love and actually do care about. This is where it starts for me. Go ahead with your incredibly something pick of Cheshire Cat at number 7.
Well, real quick to go, I really, really like what you said about, and I'm the same way. I think of an album on its own, but then when you're making a ranked list, you have to do that while comparing them all to each other, which I think is a lot of fun, actually. I really like that. So for me, I'm Tyler's gonna leave the room, but I will say I also like every album from here on out. Don't even think for a second, because this is next to California. This album is bad. This album is good. In
Look,
fact,
it's literally sitting next to California. It's
no, the jump in quality, but here's my point. The jump in quality from California to this is huge. It's good. And I'll show you. I have it here. Is this one with actually I'm gonna glare on it, the cat, which is cool. And Tyler told me that there are some copies of this album that just say Blink instead of Blink-182, which I think would be really cool. I haven't found that yet, but that would be really cool to find and to own on disc. All right,
they're very rare and very
yes, it's
expensive.
rare.
Yeah.
Okay, this one. And again, for every album on the way out, I like all these. It just turned into which albums I like more. There's some albums I love more than others. There are other albums, like as we get higher, that I put lower, but I still really love them. It's just whichever I like more. Now this album is interesting for me in that there are songs on this album that are also on Buddha, which is the demo album that we're including. And I kind of will, as you can see, I'm going to put Buddha higher than this album. And so it's kind of hard for me to talk. I kind of talk about these two not interchangeably, together, and I shouldn't, because they're different releases. But for me, it seemed like the songs, well, we'll get into why I think some of the songs on Buddha are actually better, which is interesting because that's the demo album. But this album, compared to Buddha, I think is more straight ahead. Buddha takes more risks. Again, we'll get more into that later. But on this one, on Cheshire Cat, I mean, they're packing a lot of attitude in this one, which is something I really like about it. It's, well, and they do take other, and for me, because it's something I didn't like grow up with Blink-182, so I kind of get into this whole thing like, oh, every song sounds the same. But I mean, in a good way. Like, I don't want people to think like, oh, I just think every song sounds the same. That's kind of true, but not really, because most of the songs from here on out I think are very good. But this album, they do take some risks. You got the song, what is it? Where is it in my notes here? Benoit Balls, which has like all the feedback and almost like a ska reggae kind of breakdown. I really, really like that. And then also the song after that, just happens to be songs at the end of the album, Just About Done, which is a total party yelling. But I like, it sounds like Primus. And of course, me playing bass, I like that. I like Primus a lot. So I think that's really cool. But I like the attitude packed into this thing. I like how it just kind of rages at you. I don't have that much to say, but I like this album a lot. I recommend it. I definitely think every album from here on out, I consider it to be an essential release in the Blink-182 discography. Everyone's going to be, I mean, they're already hitting that dislike button, even though Tyler told them not to, but I think that's...
They went back to it and clicked on it, man.
They went back. They're just going back and forth at this point. What else? I mean, this album for me, it just seemed really straight ahead, which isn't bad. It's good. I like this. I like that a lot. It's just, again, things get more interesting and more interesting as we go further. But no, definitely, this is a good album. And I'm saying that for Tyler's sake, I guess. But I like this one. Like I said, I like every album from here on out. So that's good.
Yeah, and something's got to be in 7th place.
And that's just what it came down to. But that tells you how good. It's kind of like with Dinosaur Jr. You know, I had however many 10 out of 10 albums on that list, but that just tells you how good this band is across the board.
Yeah, that is a testament to that fact. That is for certain. It's unfortunately right next to California, and I'm just gonna have.
But it's way better. It's way better.
I'm just gonna have to look at that the rest of the video. Hey, how about this? We're gonna, because this and
move it a little closer. Oh yeah, move both of those. In fact, you can take 9 in California and just move them to the right, so like we can't see them anymore. I think that'll just move them off the screen.
I think I could move yours that low. I think I don't see them as much garbage as you do. I think that I don't care about them, but I don't think they're trash.
Okay, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. I could move yours off this here. How about
just move this off the screen.
yeah? Or
Okay.
well, it's not really letting me move them, so
That's
I'll
fine.
just kind of do this. But I just start talking about um, Cheshire Cat, and so I suppose that I will do that. No, Neighborhood.
Is that your next one?
Oh, sorry.
Oh.
I forgot that I already discussed this album that's here in my hand. So we'll go on to our number 6 picks. My number 6. Well, actually, I picked number 7 first. Joe, pick number 6 first. Which one is it?
My number 6 is Buddha.
Okay. All right. My number 6 is Take Off Your Pants.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Jacket. Some people might not like that I placed this so low. So Take Off Your Pants and Jacket. This is an album that I like a lot. And I like it better than Neighborhoods, as you can see. It's an album that I love. I think this is more, when I think of what Blink-182 sounds like, this is more what I think of than Neighborhoods, the content on Neighborhoods. I think it's a good album, but I think it's kind of a departure in a way from what I think of Blink-182 as. And I guess let me explain some reasons why. One of the reasons why is because I think this album has some of the least interesting guitar riffs. And considering that Blink-182 is a guitar-driven band, I really miss the riffs. I think that the riffs on Neighborhoods are actually significantly better than the riffs on this album for the most part. Now, that's not to say that they're all bad. It's just to say that they're quite a bit more boring and kind of standard and uninspired sounding. Now, given that this was kind of released in the wake of the success of Enema of the State, their most successful album commercially, I think it makes sense that it kind of lacks ambition and has a bit more of that like polished pop punk thing. That is good. They have a really good brand of polished pop punk. But I think that some of the creativity and some of the punk energy of their earlier albums goes away, and it kind of becomes mostly a pop album. Now it is a really good pop album with some punk in there. Definitely some punk in the lyrics and in some of the guitar tones. But yeah, just I'm missing a lot from the guitars, which really brings this low on the list. And I'm missing a lot of the punk element, which also brings it lower onto the list. But like I said, it's an album that I love, and I love it more than Neighborhoods. Now, I will say the drum parts are, of course, really terrifically written. I would say that this album comes across to me as really fun and really good, but also extremely random. Like they just have random moments where it's very serious, and I'm like, I would like to take you seriously, but I can't because you just sang about like meeting a girl at the rock show and like going on a first date, and like now you're gonna sing me a serious song about divorce and its effect on kids. Like the song's nice. I like the song. It just is random. That's my point. There's some cool elements and kind of calls back to earlier Blink-182 albums in this album that's kind of Easter eggs for fans. One example would be the song Online Songs, which is basically the sequel to the song Josie. Because in Josie on Dude Ranch, he's all about this girl, like she's just amazing. And then in Online Songs, he hates the same girl, Josie. He says, Josie, you're my source of most frustration. And so how the tables have turned. It's just a fun thing for Blink-182 fans. So I think that stuff is pretty nice. It really is a fun album. It's mostly good and has a lot of memorable songs on it. I will say that it feels like the most straightforward album from the Tom era to me. Not overflowing with creativity, but still great songs that I love and like to listen to. And I would say that in general, it doesn't sound very inspired or like it's coming from a very deep place in general. And whenever it tries to be deep, it comes across as random. And so those are kind of some of my thoughts. I would say also maybe the serious parts don't just sound random. I think they also sound a little bit insincere. Like, do you actually care about this, or are you just trying to care about this sort of idea? And I think that this sort of randomness that's on this album, more so than any other Blink-182 album, the randomness kind of comes from some beginning strains between Mark and Tom, because at this point in the career, Mark wanted to go in that direction of still making all the small things all the time. And he really liked that direction for the band, which it was a good song. It's a good direction for the band. And Tom wanted to do a bit more serious work. And so it was after they made this album, Take Off Your Pants and Jacket, that Tom went and did his side project thing, Boxcar Racer, which is a much more serious album. And in a lot of ways, Tom's experience doing the Boxcar Racer thing in 2002 kind of leads to how serious the self-titled album turned out in 2003, because Boxcar Racer happened. Mark kind of felt left out of that whole thing because on Boxcar Racer, Tom, he's like not wanting to hire a session drummer, and so he asked Travis if he'll play drums on it, and Mark's like, hey, but what about me? Why are you just leaving me out? And kind of felt a certain way about that. And so the 2003 album comes out, and it actually has a lot of those serious elements. And I think that that's somewhat of a compromise on Mark's part to kind of be involved in the sort of camaraderie of the other two guys. An interesting bit of little chaos starting in the band, you know. But anyway, I think that difference between where Mark wanted the band to go and where Tom wanted the band to go, I think that leads to some of the randomness on this album, Take Off Your Pants and Jacket, which, how does anyone say that title with a straight face? I will let you discuss Buddha.
Yeah, and real quick, gosh, I keep finding these different tangents, but they're all so good. Tyler has brought up several times talking about the lyrics of songs, which is good and something to look for in songs. And for me, not just with Blink-182, but in general, lyrics honestly isn't something I really look for or even think about a lot. And like, I'll think about the melodies and how a song is sung, but like the lyrical content itself is just not something not that I don't like it, I just not really something I care about as much in music, unless the lyrics are really, really, really good or really, really, really bad. Like the song Online Songs you mentioned, where it references Josie from Dude Ranch. I think that's really cool. And that's one thing I wrote down about that song. I really like how it continues the story. And this isn't really related to Buddha specifically. This is just in general, but I guess if you hear me not talking about lyrics as much, that's why. Not because I don't like it. I just don't really think about lyrics all that much. I know that's probably a really unpopular opinion, but it's just, I don't know. But Tyler's, and you're right, you know, there's a lot going on Take Off Your Pants and Jacket, which is a really, really kind of out there, random kind of title. And I understand everything you said. I'm really, really interested in how both our lists are kind of, I'm still laughing at how small those other two are. All right, Buddha. Yeah, so this album, and also, so this is new to me because in my ranking of different things, I've never included a demo album I'll get to something else in a second. I've never included a demo album in a group of studio albums, but I'm glad we did. I'm glad Tyler brought this up because I really like this album. I have it, is this one here. And so, fun fact about how I got this album. So I'm from Kansas City, but I live in Colorado now. And in Kansas City, there's this really cool store called Half Price Books where they sell discs, but they don't have any Half Price books in Colorado. They just have them in Kansas City. And so I went home for Christmas and I got coupons from Half Price Books, and I came back to Colorado and I'm like, well, there's no Half Price Books here, but they have a website. And I found this album Buddha on the Half Price Books website. And I was like, that's really cool. I really like that album. And with the coupon, I think I saved like $1 So it wasn't even that much financially, but I was like, that's like, and I've only, well, also because it's hard to find, I've only ever seen this album new, like once before. And I was like, that's really cool. Like it stood out to me, you guys, but like it actually did. And so that's why I have this album. But I think that's really funny, but also really cool because it's like, still, still getting to experience half price books, I guess, even if it's online. I don't know. But I really like this album. Okay.
Alchemist.
Alcoves, yeah.
In
They
half-price books.
that's right. Yep. So again, I hate to be um going, oh, it's the same song over and over, but it's not, because it's what they do with it that makes it, I think, is really interesting on this album. I took a lot of notes on here, like Romeo and Rebecca is almost like shoegaze in a way. Got that really grunge. The guitar effects on that I think are really cool. What else? The song Fentuzler, that also kind of reminds me of Dinosaur Jr. It's got like the really rhythmic guitar noise going on. Point of View, which is also just straight up noise, I really like. So for me, so now we can talk about the songs on Buddha that are also on Cheshire Cat. They definitely sound like more production on Cheshire Cat than they do in Buddha, obviously, because Buddha is the demo album and Cheshire is the actual studio album. That makes sense. But for me, I almost like it's weird. I almost like the vocals on Buddha more because they're a little more out there and they kind of have, I don't know, there's just this quality about it that I like more the vocals on Buddha than I do on Cheshire Cat. And it's kind of, I guess, part of the reason it gave Buddha the edge. But going in, and I didn't know this album at all. I think I knew most of these before, but this was new to me because I never listened to it before. But I was just assuming, or I was just kind of guessing, Cheshire will be, more produced and more well thought out, and it would go higher than Buddha. Again, that makes sense to think going in. But I don't know, something about how Cheshire, while very good, is very, to me, seem very straight ahead. Buddha is kind of more, it does whatever, and they're kind of throwing it all out there, and I think a lot of it works. I think it's a really, really nice album. Oh, also, well, on both of these albums, you got a lot of like bass intros. Of course, I play bass, but on this album, the bass tone, it feels really sweet for some reason. It just feels really nice. What else? I talked about half price books. I talked about, and I don't know. We'll see what Tyler thinks. I don't know if this is one. I don't know if it's controversial to put it high or low, depending on what most fans think. I put it where I thought it should go. But I really like this album. I think and even for a demo album, I think it's a really good release. And I'd like to thank Tyler for including this one because it was really fun to listen to.
I would say, to answer your concern, it's a little bit controversial to just include it at all.
Sure, makes sense.
Maybe to put it high, to put it above Cheshire Cat, I think is a little bit controversial. It's higher on my list, so I guess I'm crazy or something. I don't know. This is just our own impression. I mean,
you wait.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is that people don't understand when they watch our videos is that our opinions are factually correct and are completely infallible.
That's very true.
Yeah. And also, I forgot to show, boom.
Oh, yeah, there it is.
You don't know. That's how they say it in Britland. Boom, you don't know. Okay, we're going to move on to number 5. My number 5 is Buddha. Siddhartha Gautama. That's the name of the Buddha. Not that one in particular. He's kind of larger. But who you got?
I'm scared to say this next one. My number 5 is Dude Ranch.
Okay. Is that so? The tension is palpable. If I had a knife, I would cut it. All right, I'm just going to talk about Buddha.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll get to your nonsense opinion here just a little bit. Now Buddha. This is a demo album. I recorded it on this list because it was a commercially available release. And so there were people that bought it, and there's still people that buy it, and there are people that listen to it. Actually, hold on just a second. Set my notes aside. I wanted to say this to you because you said that Finn Toozler on Buddha reminds you a bit of Dinosaur Jr. I have a comment to make. You should check out Blink-182's cover of Freak Scene.
Dope.
It is on the Fly Swatter demo.
Cool.
Yeah. Which, mentioning the Fly Swatter demo, I guess I should mention this before I get into my thoughts about Buddha. Blink-182's discography has this run in it where it does this funny kind of alphabetical order thing throughout it. And so their first thing that they did was this demo tape called Fly Swatter. The front cover of this demo tape is just blue, and it has the letter A in black. That's the first thing they did. Now, they did this thing called Demo 2, which isn't really part of what I'm saying now. But their next release was the Buddha demo, which starts with a B. So far we have A and then B, and then we're going to go through the alphabet to Cheshire Cat with C, Dude Ranch with D, Enema of the State at E, and then they released a live album called The Mark, Tom, and Travis Show, which has a big old F on the bass drum. And then they released this album, Take Off Your Pants and Jacket, in 2001, which had the jacket actually has a G on the jacket. And so that's just kind of a fun fact about Blink-182, their earlier discography. It's this alphabetical thing. It's just kind of fun. I will now talk about Buddha, the thing that I was supposed to do before my at least 2 tangents that I just went on. Okay, here we go, Buddha. It is a demo album. It has that raw sound, and so I think that this album in particular, there's like one way to listen to it, and that is on good speakers, and that is very loud. Very loud. That way you can really take in what's being presented to you in the demo album here. Now, a lot of the lyrics on the album are kind of this lovey-dovey poetic thing with a great sense of humor. There's quite a lot of kind of like sensitivity and insecurity of kind of teen relationship thing, but they really do kind of explore that topic in a lot of interesting ways and very funny ways as well, and kind of stupidly honest ways. It's an album that's pretty full of out of tune singing because it's just a demo. It's just this thing that they're like, here's what this is. But that means that it's kind of something more for fans of the band, more so than your casual listener. And so if you're going to go to somebody and show them Blink-182, Buddha's usually not the first thing you show them because it's rough. You know, it's kind of rough around the edges. But everything that makes an essential Blink-182 recording is absolutely here. It just doesn't have the production value or bit of quality that's added with like a studio, you know, or like a studio production engineered whole product. It just kind of lacks that. But everything that's essential Blink-182 is absolutely here. The distorted guitar sound on this album is so beautiful to me, especially when it's loud. And then there's a lot of funny stuff, but there's a lot of very nice, there's a lot of, I've talked about the lyrics already. The lyric writing and the guitar writing, I think, are done with some like serious merit. There's a lot of just great examples of both of those things. And I think it's a really interesting thing to compare the versions. Here's a fun fact. 7 of the songs that are on Buddha, which Buddha is a 14-track album, 7 of those songs end up being re-recorded and put onto the album Cheshire Cat, which is not a demo album, it's an album. And so it's interesting to compare side by side each one of those songs. And I would say in general, I like most of those songs better on, well, actually it's kind of tricky. I like elements of different songs. Let's start off with Carousel, let's say. Carousel opens both albums. It's the first track on both of them. One of the things that's better about the version of Carousel that is on Cheshire Cat is that it has that longer intro that's really cool. one of the things that's better about Carousel on Buddha is that during the chorus, Mark has that line. So Tom sings this lyric, and right now it's not popping into my head, but right after Tom sings it, Mark sings it also, and that doesn't happen on the Cheshire Cat version of the song, and I wish it did, because if it did, I would say that Cheshire Cat is definitely the best one. But because the Buddha thing has Mark singing that extra line that's like echoing what Tom just sang, I really miss that every single time I listen to the Cheshire Cat version of the song Carousel. And so there's interesting differences between all these things. And as you have listened to these albums a lot over the years, kind of growing up, and especially as I said at the beginning of the video, being a pretty massive Blink-182 fan, these differences are really interesting to me. Today I was listening to the song Strings in particular to try to decide which one of those I liked better. And to me, the Cheshire Cat version of that song is better than the one on Buddha. And the main reason for that is the guitar tone during the verses of the song. It is the most beautiful guitar tone I've ever heard on the Cheshire Cat version. And on the Buddha version, it's a demo. Like, you're gonna get a really nice guitar tone, but it's not that good. The Cheshire Cat version is like it will bring a tear to your eye, listening to Mark sing at the same time as that guitar riff being played by Tom, sounding like the most beautiful thing ever, that beautiful distorted guitar tone. And so in that case, the Cheshire Cat version is definitely better for the song Strings than on Buddha. And so I would say that in general, I like the Cheshire Cat versions better, but there are a lot of very interesting nitpicks and comparisons you can make between the two versions of all these duplicate songs. And then talking back about Buddha, you have like cover material on it, like The Girl Next Door, for example, is cover material, and it's nice. And then you have some unique songs that are just on Buddha. And they are there. It's like you said about Buddha earlier, they take some pretty legitimate risks. They do very interesting songwriting things. I would actually say that in general, Buddha is kind of a more dynamic album than Cheshire Cat. Cheshire Cat is more of a sort of a flat listen dynamically. Although obviously I have Cheshire Cat rated above Buddha for reasons that I'll explain later. But I think that is an interesting point to make. I do think that Buddha has a lot of dynamic quality, and some real risks in their performances. And so those are some of my thoughts on Buddha. And it's halfway through because it's a 9-album discography, and I put it right there at number 5, which means let me think about it. Yeah, there's 4 above it and there's 4 below it. And so it's squarely in the middle. And then I almost don't want to hear your thoughts, but I also really like you. And so tell us about why Dude Ranch is this low.
So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to try and rebuild my friendship with Tyler and what I say about this album. Oh, no. He's taking it off.
The moment you started talking, I already am mad.
Snap. He's already mad. What is your shirt? It looks cool. Like, actually, I like your shirt.
It's an MF Doom shirt.
Oh, MF Doom, yeah. That's cool. I see it.
Rip X.
Yo, Rip X. Rip Juice WRLD. Yeah. Sorry, I got focused on your shirt. That's dope. Okay. I love this album. This album is awesome. It just turned into which albums I like more. And also, I'll show you, this is the album that got me into Blink-182. Now, when I bought this, you'll notice it is not orange. It is white on the back, which is like not, at the time was like not a big deal because it's like I have the album. But then I was like, well, I want that orange copy. So I bought it again, and I have another one. Oh, there it is. There's the orange. Yeah. I haven't opened up for you. It's got the orange, which it's weird. I don't know why this one is white, but it doesn't matter because I have both of these.
You can tell you're a new Blink-182 fan because the first one you bought was white.
I know.
Therefore discrediting your opinion that this is so low on the list.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, obviously that's
unfortunately,
true.
But I do have the orange one, so I've somewhat maybe redeemed myself, but not really.
You still have atoning to do. Tomorrow's Easter, by the way.
Yeah. This album is really, really awesome. And there's some things I'm going to say about this album that sound like negatives, but they're huge, huge positives. These songs they go past you. They all blow past you really quick. It's like bam, 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 but like in a good way. And it doesn't matter that all the songs sound the same because they're all great. They're all really awesome. And then also, and you're all going to laugh at this next one, but every song sounds like the end credits of a skateboard movie, like, skateboarding into the sunset, blackout, roll credits, but again, in a good way. I really like every song on this album. It just turned out to I mean, oh God, I'm trying to make Tyler stay friends with me, and I don't know if it's working, but on this album, it's, at the end of the day, while it is awesome, it is really, I don't mean to just call it straight ahead because it's not, it's really great. But I mean, it's the same kind of ideas. But I mean, the other albums I think have more interesting, we'll get into how much I like the anthemic stuff, the really empowering or enlightening, I guess. And this happened to just get put lower because of that, because of the ones I like ahead of it. But I also I want to mention the song. I mean, I could talk about every song. The opener, Pathetic, I wrote in my notes. I said, I hope the neighbors like this song, because I think, I was playing it like really freaking, really loud. The whole thing is just nonstop. But also the song New Hope, with all the Star Wars references. This song shouldn't work at all, but it does. It's really great. I honestly like this song a lot. And it really captures that teenage angst, but in such a unique, it puts a spin on it. It's a creative way. I don't know what else to say without revealing what I think of the other albums, but I mean, this is essential. This is a classic album. I want to, and I'm not just saying that, I mean it. And I think that this, I'm like, if this needs to be talked about in the same way that people, because I don't know, I feel like, at least from what I've seen, people put this, some people don't, like, they put it high up, but they don't put it like, well, I say that because I say that, like, some people don't put this high up, but of course I'm not putting it high up either, but I love this album. So I'm kind of contradicting myself, but I'm saying that in the way that I really, really love this album. I think other people should love this album the same way that I do with all the others above it, if that makes sense.
Okay. I would say your thoughts were interesting, except they weren't. By the way, I forgot to show my copy of Buddha.
Oh, there it is.
No, I'm just kidding. Of course, your thoughts are interesting, and there was a couple things that you said that I really thought were fascinating. One of the things was that you said all the songs just kind of blow past you really fast. I think that's definitely true. I've never really considered that. I think that's an interesting thing to raise.
I like that about the album, which is weird, because you'd think if the songs are just like, you're just missing all of them, you're just like, whatever. But this song, because it has, I mean, I don't know, just maybe it's the skateboard mentality of it. It's just going so fast. And that's another thing that I really like about it.
I think, I think my thoughts that I would share about that comment are that I think that this is Blink-182's most fun album.
Yeah.
And of course, that's something I'll talk about later because it's later in my list. But I think it's the full length of this album is so easy to listen to.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like an investment of time at all. It just, when you put it on, it's like, I just have to listen to the whole thing. It just goes right by. It's an absolute breeze of a listen. It's extremely fun, and I think that's why, because time flies when you're having fun. The mantra of old. Man, so I thought that was really interesting. But that's cool. Okay, at least you love it. At least you love it.
I do. I honestly, I love it, which again tells you how good this band really is.
Yeah, that's true. It is a testament to that fact. Okay, we are now going to touch down on, so we're at the top half of the list. We're over the hump, as it were, to use the subjunctive tense. My number 4 is Enema of the State.
Ooh, that's also my number 4. We agreed on something.
Bro, not only is this both of our number 4s, but at the number 4 spot on the list, there are 4 eyeballs.
That's very true.
That's what I was thinking the whole time. Now let's see. Well, we can talk about this album kind of together.
Tyler, do you happen to own this album?
Yep.
Ooh, I do too.
Man.
Like, whoa, you guys, as a sexy nurse. Like,
Oh, are we done? Okay.
you if you want to hold it for more, we can.
Well, I didn't want it to be too long to where it was awkward. I just couldn't tell whenever we were going to stop looking at it.
No, I like looking at this album cover. We can like just okay.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. Okay, this album. It's interesting. My thoughts on this album are kind of odd. This is not an album that I tend to revisit. I would say I do not revisit California. I do not revisit 9. But the next one that I revisit the least is Enema of the State. It is one that I do revisit, but the least commonly of their discography that I do revisit, because the other 2 I just kind of written off, basically. Other than for the purposes of this video when we went and listened to them, which was fun. But yeah, I tend to not revisit this one, and there is a reason why. I like all the live versions better. The Mark, Tom, and Travis Show is a live album that I have that I couldn't actually find, and so I can't pull it up and show it to you like the other ones. But the Mark, Tom, and Travis Show came out in between the release of Enema of the State and Take Off Your Pants and Jacket, and it is live performances of Blink-182 playing a bunch of their material. Every song, except I think 2, Anthem and Party Song, are the ones that are not featured on this live album, but all the other songs on Enema of the State are featured, and most of them are basically in order, actually. And so that is, to me,
oh my gosh.
to me, it's more interesting than the polished pop punk recordings that are showcased here on Enema of the State, as you can see here. Now that we've looked at that, I'll give my next thought. The album is good, and I do listen to it sometimes. I just like the live versions of them better. And my main reason for revisiting this album is usually so I can listen to Party Song or Anthem, honestly. But I do, from time to time, check out the other ones on this album, even though I find them less interesting than the Mark, Tom, and Travis Show versions of the same songs. It's the album that was the most successful. It is the pop album. And it is also Travis Barker's first album with the band. This is when, so Dude Ranch, the tour happened towards the end of the tour. They fired the drummer and they brought in Travis Barker, who was the drummer on Enema of the State. This is the beginning of his career with the band. So this is like the pop album. It's produced in this way that I don't really like. And it's the same way I don't really love the production of Take Off Your Pants and Jacket. They're produced in a very similar way. And I'm not a huge fan of that sort of super poppy production style choice. This album is really good, though. It really is. The sequencing of it is delightful. The songwriting is witty, funny, and at times thoughtful and introspective. And I think it's not in as random of a way as Takeoff was. It's not a very random album. The things that they're saying don't come off to me as insincere. They come off as actually really interesting. And yeah, like I said, the sequencing I think is really well done. I can't imagine listening to one track of this album by itself because I'm just thinking about the one that would come after it. Always. And so when I put this album on, like, yeah, I am doing it to revisit Party Song, and maybe Party Song is the first one I'll listen to, but then I'll like go back to the beginning and just listen through the whole thing. Is my tendency, because when you hear one, the next one, you just hear it in your head. And to me, this is actually the first album on the list that I tend to do that with. And this one and the rest of the albums that are on my list, I can hear the next song in my head before they come. And then whenever a song ends, I'm expecting that thing to happen. And it starts with Enema of the State, because I think that it's crafted as an album. It's so well done, so well done. A lot of the riffs on this thing are really, really good. So much fun on this album. It's kind of party heavy in a weird way that makes it feel kind of frat bro-ish or something, but I don't really mind it at all. I think it's quite good. There's so much interesting about this album, but yeah, it's this weird thing where like I almost never listen to it. I do sometimes, but compared to the rest of the Blink-182 CDs that I do listen to, which would be Neighborhoods and above, this is the one that I listen to the least. And it's just because the Mark, Tom, and Travis show is that good, and the versions of the songs are just better there, and they do such a good job capturing the performance of the recording in this live setting that sounds much better to me. So it's this album that I like a lot in an odd kind of strained way. Yeah. Like after I've been talking about this album, I probably need to go use some Preparation H. Yeah, due to the strain. And that was Potty Humor. Welcome to the Blink-182 discography ranking. So Joe, go ahead and tell us your thoughts about this album.
Well, first, I love what you said about the sequencing, and I agree. I wrote in my notes here, I said, this album really feels like it's telling a story. And I know it's not like a concept album, but you talk about musically, you're waiting or you're anticipating that the opening moment of that next song. Like I'm in the same boat with you on that. I agree. So I wrote on here, if you go online and you look up like what are people's opinions on the best pop punk albums of all time, there's usually, at least in what I've seen, there's usually two that are at the top of the list. There's Dookie by Green Day, and then there's this one by Blink-182. And for me, I mean, obviously I was the Green Day fan, or I am the Green Day fan, and that's kind of the album that got me into CDs and ultimately got me into music. So it's interesting, and it's already intriguing to me, the idea of this album, that people are affected or impacted by this the same way I'm infected by Duke, and how I didn't grow up listening to Enema of the State, but how that, I don't know, I think that's really interesting to think about. Also, this album was made in 1999, which was the year I was born. So that alone makes it like top tier, you guys. No, but seriously, there's stuff. So we're talking about the things that sound really anthemic and powerful, and there's stuff like musical things or musical moments on this album that are sheer brilliance that I really love, and what kind of, I guess gave it the edge over some of the other albums. It's really, well, I guess it feels really triumphant. I can say more of that for the albums coming up. What else? Oh yeah, so two things. Well, there's a lot I could say. There's so many moments on this that I love. They're all over the place. So sometimes I look for not only a good opening track, but a good opening, like two tracks that start the album, like a 1-2 punch. And this album with Dumpweed and Don't Leave Me nails it. I think those two songs are so perfect, and they work so well together, and they work so well in opening the album. They might be my favorite two on the album. I also really like the anthem, of course, the anthemic at the end, with the vocals on that are so soaring and so high. What else do I have to say about this? I meant to listen to it, but I was so focused on these albums here. I have not listened to Mark, Tom, and Travis show, which that will be when we talk about everything else they've made, that's what I'm going to listen to next, because that's something. And even before I talk about wanting to own it, but even just to listen to it before I own it, I'm from Tyler's opinions on it. That's really interesting that you like the live tracks on that more than the actual album, which is really cool to think about. What else do I have to say? Oh yeah. My initial reaction to this album was really, really weird. I didn't like that the vocals were like right on the beat the whole time. And like, that's the point. It's supposed to be angsty, but I wasn't really into that style of singing. But then the album they released next, Take Off Your Pants and Jacket, kind of does the same thing. And I like the vocals on that album. So I was kind of like in this headspace where I was like, well, this is a total contradiction. Why am I thinking this way? So what I did with Enema of the State was I put it down and like just stopped listening to it for a while and came back and loved it. And I love the vocals on the album. I don't know why I was thinking that before. But I really, yeah, I can say I like the vocals on this album as I like the vocals in Take Off Your Pants and Jacket, which is kind of odd that I didn't like it before, but I really like this album a lot. Again, all the small things. Second song I ever learned how to play on bass. Aliens Exist was in Rock Band 2, so I've got those, or not Rock Band 2, Lego Rock Band, which again, not really. Those were before I even really knew what Blink-182 was, but having that kind of background, I guess, is interesting. But yeah, really, really brilliant moments, I think, is what did it for me on this album. And yeah, I think that's all I have to say for now.
Cool. Well, I have a couple other comments to make about this album. Number one would be, I mentioned it's kind of their pop album. Now, I actually don't think that was by the band's choice. I don't really think the band chose to make this their pop album. I think that they liked the product that came out because they started working with that guy. I think his name was Jerry Finn, who produced it in this particular way, that it would become incredibly successful. This very polished kind of pop punk sound. But I think that these songs played in a more Dude Ranch sounding way, which is what they do on the live album and how it sounds. I think that the same exact songs no longer sound like the pop album that this is if they're played in that way, which they are on the live album. And I think that's kind of interesting because I think that the choice to make this the pop album was basically not the band's decision, but the band didn't really mind that much or see it as anything kind of interesting. But I think the fact that the band allowed it to be kind of the pop album is really what did shoot them into the stratosphere. And I think that it did kind of pave the way for them to have a very interesting rest of their career. And I think that's nice. Yeah. Well, cool. By the way, can you show me what version of this album you have?
Oh yes. What do you mean, which version? Like, what are you looking for?
Just show the whole thing.
So there's the front, and then here is.
No, don't flip it over.
Oh.
Just show that.
You just want to see the front?
I'm just getting a close look to make sure that I know what version it is. So my number 3 is Cheshire Cat.
Okay.
What is yours?
My number 3 is the self-titled.
The self-titled. Okay. You have an interesting list.
I think I correctly, yeah, we'll get into my opinions, but I think I correctly predicted your top. Well, I did correctly predict your top 2. I just didn't know which one is number 1 and which number is number 2 yet.
Dude, to be honest, I got yours so wrong.
Really?
Oh yeah. I was telling my wife earlier what I thought you would do. What a complete disaster. I feel like I don't know you at all. No, okay, let's do it this way. Since we've already talked about Cheshire Cat, I'll go ahead and talk about Cheshire Cat first.
Sure.
Cheshire Cat. Let's see. I have some notes here. When I listen to this album, I think that it is the best album by Blink. Like, when I'm listening to it, I'm like, this is number 1. Like, I like this better than all the rest of it. But that's kind of that thing I was talking about earlier. My own philosophy of how I judge music is normally not like against other things. But whenever I was thinking about this list, I love this album so much that while I was listening to it, I was thinking, well, it has to be the best one. It has to be. But I love those other 2 even more.
Yeah.
But here's the first album where this one, the next one, and the next one, these are like my babies. I love them in a different way than I love Enema of the State and the rest of them. Now, like I mentioned earlier, 7 of the recorded songs from Buddha are also re-recorded here onto this studio album, and I kind of already touched on some of that. Now, this album shows that even though they have that unrefined sound, they really know how to write a song. I think that this era right here, Cheshire Cat and into Dude Ranch, Cheshire Cat is really hinting at the fact that these dudes really know how to write songs with interesting parts where, like, I mean, whenever you listen to these songs, there's like 11 riffs per song. It's like a lot of normal music has like a riff for the verse, a riff for the chorus, but these, it's just like riff after riff after riff after riff after riff, or riff. That's kind of hard to say fast. Riff after riff, riff after riff. I almost put a T there. Yeah, that's hard. Try that at home. Try, how fast can you say riff after riff? Just over and over. That's an interesting challenge for you people at home. This is how you can
Drop a comment down below if you were successful in this challenge.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah, this album, it delivers performances with such merit, and it still sounds a little bit off the rails, which I think gets cleaned up on Dude Ranch a little bit. Like, they do the out of control sound very well, but I think on Dude Ranch they'll do the out of control sound in a way that sounds controlled, but it also sounds out of control. It's in, like, when they're just blazingly fast and all that. Cheshire Cat has some of the most incredible guitar tones, like I was mentioning earlier. It's like you'll hear these counter melodies being played as riffs on the guitar. And it's an interesting thing where it almost feels like some of the things that are being played on the guitar are played by someone who is an amateur musician who doesn't understand that you're not supposed to be that busy under a lead vocal line. But the way it turns out is kind of magically delicious. Like I was mentioning the song Strings earlier, there is very much this, there is the vocal melody that Mark is singing, and then the counter melody that Tom is thinking of like a riff, and they're just happening at the same time. And it's just kind of insane, but it really does mesh extremely well. And there's a lot of other examples of that sort of thing on Cheshire Cat, that sort of amateurish thing. But Tom is thinking about his counter melodies like a riff. And I would say that they're a lot more like a counter melody, but they're functioning as a riff, which puts it in kind of this complicated territory that makes the sound of this album feel very busy in general. There's just a whole lot coming at you all at once, all over this whole thing. Now, I will also say that Cheshire Cat in general feels like there's just a lot coming at you all at once all the time, and the sound of it is super glorious. But I will also say that this album tends to be a little heavy-handed in the loudness department. There are softer moments, but a lot of this album feels very kind of straight dynamically. I think that the songs, and the way the songs are performed and the way the songs are written make up for the fact that that's so straight dynamically, because the tempo is constantly changing, because it's more of a punk album than a pop punk album. It's more on the punk side. And so the tempo is kind of this thing that's like a suggestion. It's not exactly a requirement. Whereas you're going to listen to like Enema of the State, and the tempo is a requirement on a project that sounds like that. But when you're listening to Cheshire Cat, it's just a very much more of a live sound, and a live recording where they're just kind of interacting with each other at every turn, and they're not playing to a click. They're just kind of playing together and listening to each other and interacting. And there's a whole lot of that gives the album quite a bit of nuance. And so I forgive sort of the straightness of dynamic level across the album in that particular way. There's a lot of kind of chaos that breaks up the monotony that can come with that straight dynamic level. There's a lot of really good songwriting, like I was saying. There's also a lot of intentionally funny songwriting. The last 3 songs on this 16-track album are just jokes. It's just what they are. They're meant to be jokes. And you mentioned 2 of them earlier. I'm going to mention my favorite of the 3, which is Depends. which I quote on a regular basis. I'm also a nurse, and so like as a career, I'm a geriatric psych nurse, and so I am constantly changing diapers of people who wear Depends. Um, and I guess it all depends undergarments. That's a line from the song. Man, it's just it's so funny. I love the song Depends. But and I love the two that you mentioned as well. I think they're hilarious. And the Primus thing, I didn't think about that with Just About Done, but I think that's accurate enough. Yeah, I think it sounds kind of like that dark bass thing, and it's also got that element of humor. I think that makes a lot of sense. Um, yeah, I this is really an album that I could go on and on about, just gushing about all the different moments of the thing that I love. Like when I put on a song, I'm like, okay, listen to how this guitar is about to sound, and then it just kicks in. I was like, oh, it's so perfect. And like I was mentioning earlier with the strings thing, just the best guitar tone I've ever heard. It's just the bomb. And I don't mean that super literally, but when I'm listening to it, that's how I feel. It's like just the best thing. Um, so those are some of my thoughts on Cheshire Cat. I'll say that the reason it's like at number 3 instead of at number 2 or at number 1 is because compared to these other two that I have here, Dude Ranch and the Blink-182 self-titled album, I think that this one it could use some refining and kind of some more musicality because of that straight dynamic level. I love it so much that I forgive it for that. So it's kind of like the rotten redheaded stepchild of my little family of 3 babies that I love up here at the top. So if I was going to pick a favorite child, I don't think I could do that, but I could pick a least favorite of the 3, and it's this one. Just there's just something wrong with it. I just love it anyway. Yeah, let's hear your thoughts about the self-titled album by Blink-182 called Blink-182.
Yeah, so they have the Blink-182 has an album. It's called Blink-182.
I think I've heard of them.
Well, I've also heard of them, you guys.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa. Oh, yours has a sticker on it.
Yeah, it talks about some of the songs that are on it.
Mine does not have that, so that is cool.
Yeah.
I had not realized that. The self-titled, so you talking about gushing with all the moments and everything happening on it is very cool. And that's also how I feel about this one, even more so than Enema of the State, which is, consequentially is why it is higher. This one, this is where they start to bring, well, there's a lot I have to say about this album. But first off, they start to bring in the electronics, which they use on, I guess it would be, if you look at it chronologically, they do that on this album onward, because you've got, I never really thought about that, but yeah, self-titled, Neighborhoods, and then California 9. And I really like the electronics on this album, and I love the atmosphere. And I'm going to refer to my notes here some more. I've got so much to say. I'm trying to organize my thoughts. Like they do these just really crazy, like the song will just go into like space or something, and it just goes, and it reminds me of The Cure, which is also Robert Smith is on this album, and his song is called, what was it called? All of this. This song with Robert Smith is amazing. And also, I think it's just like the coolest thing ever that they really like The Cure, and they saw that, and they were able to get Robert Smith on their song. And Robert Smith was like, "Hey, I like your guys' music." Like that's, to me, is like the coolest thing ever. Like if a musician, I don't know, like if I got Mark Hoppus, for example, to play in my band or whatever, like that would be the most honoring thing ever. I can't imagine how many must have felt when they got Robert Smith on their song, and that song's great. There's so much, and also not just the electronics, there's so much like orchestration and everything, like the song I Miss You, which I know, where are you, like is a meme song, but I really, really like this song. I think it's really, really pretty. And the way that the string is kind of like crescendo, like fade in, it's really nice. So like they will, I mean, they go hard. They play it really heavy, and then it just totally like spaces out, but in the most beautiful way. Like The Cure and like Robert Smith and all this. Oh yeah. So my story about this album. So last summer I was living at my parents' house in Kansas City, and I was trying to get a job at this church in Colorado, the church I work at now. And one of the things they did, they flew me out so I could go visit the church. And I was really excited to be in Colorado again. And I get the rental car, and it's like late at night. It's night. It's really dark out, and I'm flying down the highway, and the windows down, all the windows down, and I was playing this album and just blasting it. And from a musical experience, it's one of the coolest things I've ever experienced. It was just so fun. It's awesome. So that's cool. I like that about. And the reason I was listening to it was, I think I literally like just bought it the other day before flying out there, and I was like, oh, I should listen to this, and I put it on. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. But it's just so interesting. And also, you know, people talk about how this is the mature, this is the emo album, and this reminds me of course, Sunny Day Real Estate, which is another band I like, and oddly enough, not Real Estate, which I'm always talking about, the actual Sunny Day Real Estate, which I really like. And I like it's how it's like so downcast, but it's also really pretty. Yeah, I really like this album a ton. We will see if Tyler wants to talk about this next or later. But yeah, it's a brilliant. It's really great.
I choose later.
Oh, okay. I guess Dude Ranch was your number one. Okay. All right, time for my weirdest opinion, Neighborhoods.
I think it'd be weirder at number one.
Yeah, that's the only thing that could possibly be more out of place here.
Yeah, it's pretty odd. So since Neighborhood is odd, let's hear you talk about it first.
Yeah, okay, Neighborhoods. So, you know, this may be my weirdest opinion on this channel, to put this on this, and I totally get why people put it lower, being that it's, well, we'll get into it. And for me, in general, I like music that has that really ethereal and atmospheric quality, but also being really steady and down to earth, like the self-titled, for example. Another example that is, in fact, The Cure. The really basic example that everyone points to is the album Disintegration, but that's an album I really, really love. And this album, it's that concept, it's that idea. It's so heavy, but it's so completely in outer space. It's like the space rock. And I get it. I know people don't like that Tom DeLonge brought the whole Angels and Airwaves thing to Blink-182. But I love it. And I know another concern I've seen about this album, how just completely nasally the vocals are on this one. But again, I really like it. The brattiness, I guess, I don't know. I think it's really fun. The other thing, but yeah, this is just so anthemic and empowering, and what else? It's exciting. There's all the synths and electronics and things, but it's just such a good emotional thing, I guess. And another comparison to a band I'll make is The Killers, which The Killers is like, I mean, it's kind of like pop music, I guess, pop music in a way, but that's a band I really like. And for me, it reminds me of that, but also like, you know, you think of California and Nine being like these, well, not very good kind of sellout pop albums, but for me, this feels like pop music done right. Tyler earlier talked about how it's like Dirty Jobs or Mythbusters, where it's like guys who are old and they're doing cool things. And it just feels right to me. What else was I going to say? I mean, there's just such a fun feeling about this, and it's like the atmosphere, but like the really heavy, really exciting at the same time also. So I didn't buy this when it came out at Walmart, but I also made the mistake of buying the clean version. So here's the clean version, but then here's the explicit version. Okay. I went and picked this up after listening to it again. And they're both the deluxe version. And because, in like to Tyler's point, like you go on streaming, it's the only album you'll find on digital of this album is the deluxe version, which again, no one cares about whatever the regular version of this album, which again we talked about, but I think that's really funny.
Joe, real quick, are you aware of what's missing from the deluxe version?
Yes,
Yeah, dude. Imagining this album without Snake
and
Charmer
I
is
have not. I was lucky enough that when I bought this, even initially, I bought the deluxe version because I didn't know there was one or not. Imagine if I bought the clean non-deluxe version of this, I would throw that away. But fortunately, I have both of these. This one has a little explicit
yeah.
logo right there. Don't play this around children, you guys, because but like everything, guitars, I think After Midnight is my favorite song. Oh, I will say there's some really pop heavy choruses, even like specifically in the second half of this album that I'm kind of not into. And I admit that, like this song, like the Wishing Well, or what's the one, the really slow Love Is Dangerous. But everything, was it the first four, Ghosts on the Floor, Up All Night, After Midnight, and then Heart's All Gone, and West also has the interlude again, which The Cure, which actually reminds me specifically of the song The Forest by The Cure, which is a song I like. Yeah, I think we should turn it over to Tyler and Dude Ranch. I think that's a much safer opinion.
It is. It's safer. It's also it's not my opinion because it's safer, but it is my opinion.
Yeah.
Now this album, oh boy, it's another one where when I listen to it, I think it has to be my favorite Blink-182 album. I love it so much. This is the best of the first incarnation of Blink with the original lineup with Scott Raynor at drums. Now, I was talking earlier about that out of control thing that they do on these earlier albums where they're just flying, they're just blazing, playing extremely fast. I think they do it the best on Dude Ranch. They do it on Buddha and they do it on Cheshire Cat, but Scott Raynor really stepped it up and he is so solid with it. But it still sounds like it's about to fly off the rails anytime. At the same time, as it's just like really solid. Like he's really got a grasp of exactly what he's doing and where he's hitting it. It seems like there's been a massive improvement in his ability to play drums. Like he's just like learned a lot between Cheshire Cat to Dude Ranch, and they're playing the same style of music, but he's playing it so much better. And that's not to say he was playing it poorly earlier. It's just that he's kind of made everything sound more deliberate. And I was really drawn to that interesting tension of being really solid, but also off the rails. This album is completely nuts, and it's the most fun Blink-182 album for sure. Every song is incredibly interesting with so many creative decisions that are, yeah, they're basically just fascinating. Like track one, I would say that its thing is that double vocal, like the interaction between the two of them. Like one of them goes, then the other one goes, and it just kind of goes back and forth. Number two is a topically completely ridiculous song, the Voyeur song, and it's just you could go through each song, and each one has like a very real character that gives it. I think every single track on this album is absolutely unskippable. And if anybody ever skipped any of it, I'd be like, wait, what got into your head to make you think it was okay to skip that? That's the song that does this thing. Like, how can you miss that thing? Like, that's okay. Another thing I mentioned earlier, it's more dynamically interesting than Cheshire Cat. When you listen to this album, one of the things that I notice happens on a whole lot of songs is that he'll hold out a guitar chord and it'll just fade into the distance. And listening to that fade on a lot of songs on this album is incredible. The sound of that fade, and then as it's fading, you can kind of more easily hear the higher harmonics that are present within the sound of that chord and the tensions that are going on. So beautiful. And then you'll have like an instrument still playing while it's just fading away, or you'll have the vocalist singing while this guitar is just fading away. And so the guitars on this album are just the best. They're just the best. The riff writing is so good, and the all the different dynamic levels that the guitar is playing at, they're a lot more diverse than they were on previous albums. He's playing riffs with like palm muting, and then he's playing just the biggest open chords that sound like some huge Dinosaur Jr. thing. He's playing a lot of intricate lines, some guitar parts that are kind of tricky, and there's there's even one riff on it where I kind of just think he messed up. It's in the middle of the song Emo. I think it's just kind of a mistake because it doesn't sound like it's lining up quite where it should, but I also think it's endearing. And I love that if it is indeed a mistake, I love that it was kept. And it might have been kept accidentally and not caught as a mistake because they're like, yeah, good enough. You know, maybe they just didn't, I don't know, just a thought. But I think it sounds really interesting that it's there in the song Emo. But yeah, there's it's an album just so full of moments, and then there's these skits that are vaguely country related. Like if you take a look at the album cover, it's this dude ranch, it's this bull. There are these vaguely country related things, and yeah, it's a all the jokes are kind of bizarre and really funny. But yeah, like I said, each song has such a strong character that I think gives this the edge to Cheshire Cat, where a lot of the things are kind of sounding the same. All of the songs on Cheshire Cat are interesting, but not all of the songs have as strong of a character as the songs on Dude Ranch do. Every single song is such like a heavy contributor to this album, and I would miss all of them severely if you were to take even a single one away. And so I really like Dude Ranch. It's also my favorite bass playing of Blink-182. The bass tones on this stuff and also the parts that are written are so good on this album. They're kind of like the most ambitious he ever got with his bass playing. And then it's almost like for the rest of their career, they're like, honestly, these bass parts are kind of hard. Maybe I should like take it easy, you know, to make our live shows more able to be done. And so that's an interesting thing to note is we know how capable Mark is of playing and crafting really interesting basic part or bass parts. But he generally did fairly basic parts throughout most of his career, other than this. It's very interesting. And of course, there are exceptions, of course. And Mark still contributes so much good songwriting all over the discography as well. And so I'm not trying to diss Mark, but I am saying this is where the bass playing is this album right here. Now, another thing that I will say, this album is not considered to be the serious Blink-182 album, but this album has my absolute favorite lyrics that Blink-182 ever wrote, and they're all over this thing. Particularly Mark's lyric writing. I think this is the lyrical highlight of Blink-182. The way that he is being so poetic with these things is very different than all the other albums that they've done. I really think that Mark went into the writing of the lyrics of this album with like a poetic thing in mind or something, because the lyrics are amazing. I have a particular excerpt to read from one of the songs to kind of share a piece of where I'm getting my point. And it's from the song Apple Shampoo. And Apple Shampoo is a fascinatingly good song. There is no chorus. It's just start to finish, and it's just like 5 paragraphs. It's just reading a paper, basically, or a story. There's no chorus. The structure is basically just like, let's just keep going. I have another idea. Like, I thought of another paragraph of lyrics. Let's just keep going. That's how the song kind of is. It's really good. I also believe it was the first single from this album. Here's the set of lyrics. I know just where I stand, a boy trapped in the body of a man, and I'll take what you're willing to give, and I'll teach myself to live with a walk-on part in a background shot of a movie I'm not in. I really think that is poetic, and it's a poetic way of capturing the feeling of being in this relationship that's kind of vaguely on off. She's not that interested in you, but it's there, and you care a lot more about it than she does. This kind of one-sided relationship is being depicted with these metaphors of being in a walk-on part in the background shot of a movie. that you're not even in. There's a real degree of separation that's being illustrated there, but and he's teaching himself to live with the fact that this has to be the way it is. Like she's never going to care about him more, but he's so in love with her. And then the next line of the song after this section is, she's so important and I'm so retarded. And so it's this real insecurity that's being illustrated, but in a poetic way, but also in kind of a crass and lowbrow way, which I think is a really interesting way to do lyrics, because whenever you use really lowbrow things, they almost become like a symbol for a greater meaning. Like he's talking about, she's so important and I'm retarded. That's a very crass and kind of disgusting way to talk, and has become increasingly or decreasingly politically correct. It's not something you're supposed to say. At this time, it was more accepted, and at this time, it is less accepted, but it was crass even at the time. And because it's so crass, it becomes kind of like a symbol for youthful insecurity, in a strange way, these lowbrow things. It makes me think of other things like on the Black Country New Road, where he's talking about the mother's frail hands grip the NutriBullet. Like it's just such a middle class item to get randomly brand name dropped in such a way where it becomes this real symbol of like, look how kind of like weird and disgusting this situation is. Like a NutriBullet, like that's the most civilian thing ever. And so it becomes this symbol of just pure civilian, just kind of going with the flow, not having an identity. In the same way, I think using the word retarded has that same kind of symbolic meaning. And I think that's interesting. And probably not done super intentionally by Mark. Like he's not gonna analyze it the way that I'm analyzing it now, but I think that it's successful in that way. Which maybe he thought about the lyrics and he thought it would be successful in a different way. And he's probably also right. Like it's successful in a lot of ways because it's just poetry is what it is. And there's a whole lot of poetry on this album. And it's just kind of like, I think that in general, Blink-182 doesn't get thought of, especially in their more fun albums and especially on Dude Ranch. I think that they're generally written off as more fun albums, the Dude Ranch and that sort of era of stuff. But Dude Ranch's lyrics, that at least the Mark stuff, wow. Like I think people really should give them more credit for being lyrically very poetic and kind of meaningful and interesting, and really worth paying some attention to, I think. So that's just something that I thought was really nice. I think both vocalists sound as good as they've ever sounded on this album. I think it's interesting because Mark, I think that he sounds really, really wonderful on this album, and he also sounds really, really wonderful on the self-titled album that I'm going to get to. Now, Tom sounds really, really wonderful on Dude Ranch in a completely different way than he sounds really wonderful on the self-titled album that I'm about to get to. Mark sounds the same on both, but he's, in terms of his musical performance of how he's doing his vocals, the effort is really there and he's singing really well. Tom on both albums sounds really good, but doesn't even, it almost sounds like a different vocalist. They're very different. Of course, there's been several years in between, and I'm still not sure Tom's reached puberty. When you listen to the Blink-182 discography, that's something worth questioning. Is Tom ever going to mature? Ever, ever, ever? Now, Mark, he has this kind of excuse because he's got this naturally lower voice. So he can do all this immature stuff, but you're going to believe that he's mature. But Tom, he might be an 8-year-old. You're really not sure. Anyway, that's sort of some of my thoughts on Dude Ranch. I think that I probably gave it some more thoughts than I gave the other ones, but that's because I care about it. Yeah. Number ones. Interesting. We're going with Take Off Your Pants and Jacket um, your favorite album, hopefully not your favorite hobby. And my my, my favorite album is self-titled. All right, and since I just went on my whole tirade, I'll let you talk about your number one.
Yeah. And I think Tyler's right with the simplicity of this album. But for me, there's so much power on this, not just in the guitars, but in, I would think, to me, this seems like the best bass. I don't know what's like the best bass playing of an album. It might be maybe the self-titled, but in terms of like a bass tone or a bass sound, I think this is the best sounding and of any Blink-182 album with the bass work, just the, again, with the tone. And this album is, it's interesting because you talked about this album being really, really random, and I agree. But that's almost something I'm drawn to. I like it. Totally has that, again, the teen angst of that you hear when you listen to these pop punk. Oh, also I have this one. It's right here. Very cool. And that is all that I have. So I've showed all my discs. Mm-hmm. Yeah, where was I? Oh my gosh. There's so much I have to say that I really, really like. There's so much power and yet just and angst. And I think there's so much going on that's really, really great all the way through. Honestly, if we're talking about like contenders for best pop punk album of all time, I think this might be up there, even though this isn't one I grew up listening to when I was like in middle school. As a 23-year-old, this spoke to me like so much. And I like that simplicity of it, where it's like, story of a lonely guy, girl at the rock show. What's the one where I wrote down the lyric, roller coaster, when you drive my car right off a cliff. Just this bombastic energy that they're throwing at you the whole time. I think Shut Up, the second to last song, might be my favorite Blink-182 song, because it starts, well, I love the vocals of that. And then it's where it's just drums again, the bass sounds so good on this song in particular. And then the chorus comes in, it's just slamming. And what else do I have to say about this? I think this album's perfect. I really loved all of this. And I could keep going on and on and on, but I'm really interested to see what Tyler has to say about the self-titled, based on how much praise you gave Dude Ranch. Because I was almost for sure I wasn't sure about the self-titled, but I was for sure you'd put Dude Ranch first or second. So let's bring it home with the self-titled, because I feel like we'll have some of the same idea, since we made a video about The Cure, but also what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, it's your thoughts have been interesting on that album. Shut Up being the favorite Blink-182 song, that's very interesting to me. Very interesting. Wow. Well, let me give you some thoughts that I have regarding the Blink-182 self-titled album. It is one of their serious albums. It's not meant to be hilarious or funny or joking or that sort of thing. It's meant more serious, and it comes at a point in their career when they're all kind of having various interests, all the members of the band. And we kind of talked about some of that earlier, about Boxcar Racer, and in between Takeoff and the self-titled. And then whenever they went off and did Boxcar Racer, Mark found that, yeah, let's do something kind of serious. And so they come out with this album. Every track on this album, like I said about Dude Ranch, every track on this self-titled album has such incredibly strong identity. And it's kind of like I described on Dude Ranch, like Feeling This, that's the song. They have all these kind of like interesting effects on the drums, and there's just a lot of really interesting drum things that they do that they don't do on any other album, like the cowbell thing, and some of the fills and the grooves on this are really interesting, and snare placements, and the vocal thing, it's very nice. Tom has his thing, and then Mark has his thing, and then at the end it's like 4 different vocal tracks all happening at the same time, and all the instruments fade away, and it's just the coolest thing. It is very well crafted, that first song. And then you have the second song, Obvious, which is another super duper well crafted song. And then of course I Miss You, and it goes to Violence, which I think if you're listening to Blink 182 sequentially, the first time you hear something that will really throw you off is when you're listening through track 1 through 14 on Buddha, track 1 through 16 on Cheshire Cat, track 1 through 15 on Dude Ranch, track 1 through, I don't know, is it a 10 or 11 on Enema of the State, track 1 through whatever. And then you're listening to track 1 through 4 on the self-titled. And when you get to track 4, Violence, it's the first time you'll be like, wait, what's this band doing? It's the first time. And this album has more of that. But I think that the way that it's fitting into this album at track 4, I think it's a really good placement because it establishes that Blink-182 is still doing a really cool thing. And then track 3 is like, also, we're going to do this really pretty thing. Is very interesting, and it of course became a meme. But after they've already hit you with that left hook of I Miss You, then they hit you with the next left hook after they sell that they can be really successful with a left hook. And I think that's really critical because Blink-182 fans are used to a certain thing, and then this album happened and is different, extremely different. It's serious in tone. The jokes are gone. The music is this whole other kind of category of rock. A lot of this, there is stuff on it that sounds pop punk, and there is stuff on it that does not sound pop punk at all. And something else that I'll mention is that the guitar sounds on like every track were crafted per track. It's like this guitar sounds nothing like this guitar, sounds nothing like this guitar. And there's all these things on this album that Blink-182 has never done before and never did again that they did here. One of those examples would be like the cowbell on Feeling This. Also, at the very, very, very end of the album, there's those dueling drum solos that are happening at the same time. And then there's the crazy vocal thing at the end of Feeling This. You could also mention, I mean, I could go on and on about all the extremely like hyper unique things that this album does in this sort of artistic, ambitious way. And then, of course, the Robert Smith collaboration on the song All of This. And I guess I could also say the transition between Easy Target into all of this is completely perfect. I think it's my favorite transition on the album, and this album is full of good transitions, but my favorite transition is this one, where Easy Target kind of slows down and melts into the riff of All of This. And because there's such a similar riff, it really is kind of like a part 2. It just slides so in such a cool way right into All of This, and it just slows way down. It just sounds like it melts into it. It's just awesome. And then of course All of This is a really terrific and beautiful song. Really cool collaboration, and it's cool to see Blink-182 doing collaborations, by the way. That's so cool. It worked so well. So what a fascinating and great idea. Man, what else should I say about this? I think that this album in general from both members of the band has some of the best songwriting. I think it's Tom's best songwriting, and I think it's Mark's, I guess, second best songwriting. Even though I really like all the songwriting. It's kind of weird to say it's the second best because I just love it, but I think that honestly, Dude Ranch is a whole other approach that he was using, and I do prefer it. But this is really good songwriting from him as well. Yeah, there's just tons that's utterly unique about this album, and I would say that this probably is the only album that was approached kind of first and foremost as like an art project. It is really experimental for them, and you can tell that they are really trying to be creative and give the audience art. And I think also that this is the only album where there is some serious attention to crafting everything. I don't, the same way, like when you're listening to a Radiohead album, let's say In Rainbows, for example, everything you're hearing was put there on purpose. And I feel the exact same way about the Blink-182 self-titled album. and I feel that way only about it, and I don't feel that way about any of the other ones. And so that's kind of what gives it the edge for me above all the other ones, is just the really strict attention to detail and just the sheer intentionality of it. And also it just happens to be incredibly successful because all the songs are really good. There's a lot that really comes together for me here, and so it's my favorite.
It's awesome.
Mm-hmm. And we're done. We have ranked Blink-182, and this is gonna be a YouTube video. Right now, as I'm recording it, it's not, but when you, the viewer, watches it, it will be. Hey, your thoughts and comments would be appreciated. Drop those down below. Love to hear what you think of our ranking, and I'd love to hear some of your thoughts about how you would rank the band, or if you thought any of our predictions were just completely bonkers, and I'm sure you do, particularly when I'm looking at one of our lists. Although I'll probably get roasted by somebody who thinks my list is bonkers. One thing I find of note is that I was very offended when you put Dude Ranch that low, but I put your favorite album lower. So if one of us should be offended, it's probably you. And if this was not done over Zoom, the hands would be thrown.
It's true.
I'm certain of that. The hands would be thrown. But I would like to say to everyone who decided to watch this video, thank you so much for watching this video. Be sure to check out some of my other videos. We've ranked other artists before. We did rank The Cure. We did rank Radiohead. We have another artist in mind right now. Oh, also Dinosaur Jr. We ranked Dinosaur Jr. Now we've ranked Blink-182. And the next artist we will be ranking, I will not be saying. It will be a big surprise. But when we come out with it, then you'll know what it is. So you got it. And by the way, the only way that you're going to know when that video comes out, ready? Subscribe to the YouTube channel. YouTube offers a subscription service. Hit that notification icon bell. Ring the bell. Yeah, genuinely, thank you for checking out this video. If you liked it, I'm glad.